I'm so excited to be hosting this. My name, again, is Dina Espenscheid. I'm the Director of Grassroots Coalitions here at the Leadership Institute. And I've been doing some sort of advocacy, nonprofit work, politicking, trying to promote conservative values for about 24 years. I got started when I was very young and in high school, and I've worked as a lobbyist at the state level and at the federal level. I've worked on presidential campaigns and local campaigns. And so this is very exciting because it's sort of like the culmination of a lot of my work, trying to bring this information to you that we can help you and your ministries and your nonprofits stay afloat during these trying times. This presentation is being made possible by the Leadership Institute. The Leadership Institute's been around for 40 years. It was started by Morton Blackwell. Morton is the national committee man from Virginia. He's been involved in campaigns pretty much his entire life. We got started way back in 1979 when Morton was working for the Reagan campaign. He realized that the young people they were hiring out of college didn't really know how to run a campaign that would win. So he started traveling around the country, training up the young staffers and teaching them how to run their political campaigns. And it grew from there. So right now, the Leadership Institute has 47 different types of schools. Each school has got tons of different presentations and programming within it. And we offer these trainings for free or at low cost. Normally, our trainings mostly take place in our offices in Arlington, Virginia. And you could come to our offices, you could stay in our dorms and take a presentation, take a series of presentations over a week's long time for as little as like $100 to $300, depending upon the type of presentations. Some of them are as low as $10, as a matter of fact, and that housing and food and everything else is included in those costs. During this time of social distancing, we've moved everything online, and at the end of the presentation today, I'll show you where to look for all of our online courses in case you want to find out more about the Leadership Institute. One of the guiding principles of the Leadership Institute, though, we are a 501c3 nonpartisan nonprofit. And one of our guiding principles is Morton always says he wants to build a community, not a dictatorship, not an empire. And so when this started, when we were all kind of sent home from work, we were told, go out and find those other nonprofits that can contribute and figure out how we can serve and grow the conservative community out there. And so I reached out to a bunch of friends, and one of my friends works for Liberty Counsel, and they came up with this idea of doing this briefing on the Paycheck Protection Program, which is a program through, as you're going to find out, the Small Business Administration. Their staff, the Liberty Counsel staff in Washington, D.C. was really forward thinking in talking to the administration when the CARES Act was coming up for a vote, and really went forward and said, hey, look, you need to include nonprofits and churches in this program, and you need to protect them and their ministries and our different ways that we serve the community. Otherwise, we're going to lose these. And so they were really instrumental in getting that passed and getting these groups included in this. And so that's why I'm very excited to have Anita Staver on today. Anita is the General Counsel for Liberty Counsel, and she's going to be telling us all about this Paycheck Protection Program, what it is, help you decide whether or not you should take the funds, and then we're going to walk you through step by step how to actually receive the funds. I'm going to put in a link into the chat in just a few moments for where to go to download the sample Paycheck Protection application that Anita will be walking you through today. So if you haven't downloaded that yet, please do so or get ready to do so. If you could print it, that's even better. Today, we're going to be following up. Everyone who registers and who logs on will receive an email from the Leadership Institute, just one email from us, that will have instructions, all of the websites that Anita shares today, some extra websites, all of the tips and hints that she's sharing, as well as a place where you can download all of these slides that she's sharing. All of that is going to be shared in this email that I will get out to you shortly following the conclusion of this webinar. And then her people are recording the webinar. We are recording the webinar. Am I recording the webinar? I am recording the webinar. Yes, good. Sorry, if I don't check right away, I forget to record it, and that'd be a bad thing. So we are recording the webinar. They are recording the webinar. We're going to work to get that cut and put up and get those links out to you all as quickly as possible so that you can watch this as you fill out the forms. So let me introduce Anita. Anita Staver is the President and General Counsel of the Liberty Counsel. She also serves as General Counsel for Liberty Counsel Action. Anita is a member of the bars of Florida and the District of Columbia. Her legal practice before the United States Supreme Court and numerous federal courts has resulted in more than 40 published opinions. She is admitted to practice before all 12 federal courts of appeal. Anita has been a guest on a variety of shows, including Hardball with Chris Matthews, Alan Combs Versus on Fox News, and has been interviewed by other media, including Newsweek. Her articles have been published in many sources, including the Washington Times, WorldNet Daily, Catholic Lane, American Clarion, the Christian Post, and the Florida Baptist Witness. She has co-authored 2 scholarly law review articles and wrote for the Popular Encyclopedia of Christian Counseling. Anita was valedictorian of her class, graduating summa cum laude from Barry University School of Law in Orlando, Florida. She also studied at the International Institute of Human Rights in Strasbourg, France. After graduating with distinction from the University of Kentucky, go Big Blue, she received a Master's of Arts in Mental Health Counseling from Liberty University. Follow Anita on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Google+, LinkedIn, Tumblr, and Pinterest. Okay, so Anita, I'm going to go ahead and mute my mic and turn off my microphone and turn this over to you. Please follow up with a little bit about Liberty Counsel and any other introduction you need for yourself, and then take it away.
Well, thank you, Dina, for that kind introduction. We really appreciate being asked to partner with the Leadership Institute to provide this webinar. For those who don't know us, Liberty Counsel is an international Christian ministry that advances religious freedom, the sanctity of human life, and the family. And we do this 3 ways: through litigation, education, and policy. We started in Central Florida in 1989 and have offices in Virginia and Washington, D.C. Now, our D.C. staff keeps tabs on important legislation like the CARES Act that impact people of faith. We also assist cooperative churches that belong to our association. You can connect with us at lc.org. Let's go to the next slide. Now, our purpose today is to help nonprofit organizations and churches apply for the Paycheck Protection Program. Let me try to say that about 10 times fast. However, this presentation does not constitute legal advice or accounting advice. You'll need to contact your legal counsel or accountant for information on how the Paycheck Protection Program applies in your specific situation. So now let's dive into the materials. Next. The CARES Act became law on March 27, 2020, and included provisions designed to provide loans to keep employers of businesses and nonprofit organizations working during the coronavirus emergency. Independent contractors and self-employed persons are also eligible for the loans, but this presentation focuses on nonprofit organizations and churches. Next slide. The Small Business Administration manages and issues rules regarding the program, and they have said they will forgive loans, quote, if all employees are kept on the payroll for 8 weeks and the money is used for payroll, rent, mortgage interest, or utilities. Next slide. The loan amounts are calculated at 2.5 times the average monthly payroll for either the periods of 12 months before the receipt of the loan or the calendar year of 2019. It's your choice. Next slide. This presentation will not cover the SBA's economic injury disaster loan, but we have to explain a few things about it to know how it works with the program. The interest rate if someone wants to get additional funding for the EIDL is 2.75%. There's also a $10,000 advance available for organizations that need immediate funds, and the $10,000 is forgivable. If you apply for the Paycheck Protection Program and the EIDL, do not use the funds for the same period of time. You'll be using it for, you use the EIDL for one purpose and the Paycheck Protection Program for another. This is the only reason you really need to know about this in this presentation. Next slide. The big question is, should you take the money? Now that you know that there is money available. Next slide. People have raised ethical concerns. Many nonprofits refuse government benefits other than accepting an exemption from paying taxes. Exemptions from paying taxes are actually a government benefit. Now, we've always warned that government funds come with strings attached. However, the loan benefits are very different from past government bailouts. And why is this? Well, the government has caused your economic harm through quarantines and mandated shutdowns. Now, the CDC frequently issues guidelines. The Coronavirus Task Force announces the guidelines at a news briefing, and then the governors and local leaders use the guidelines to issue and expand executive orders, and as a result of this, nonprofits suffer loss. Now, this situation is analogous to the government taking your property for public use. We all know that the Fifth Amendment requires just compensation for a taking of property. With the program, this just compensation comes from a loan that's forgivable when used for certain purposes. Nonprofits have all been damaged by the government and deserve to be made whole by the government. This is why it's very different from taking government funds. Next. There have also been concerns raised about whether religious nonprofits will lose their autonomy. The Small Business Administration has addressed this in a written statement where they said, a faith-based organization that takes a loan will retain its independence, autonomy, right of expression, religious character, and authority over its governance. They have pointed out that the nonprofit can still set requirements for its members and employees and do not waive any rights they already have under federal law by taking the loan. Next. During the term of the loan, the nonprofit has to agree not to discriminate on certain bases. These include race, color, religion, sex, handicap, age, or national origin. And this is when only applies when they're providing goods, services, or accommodations to the general public. These non-discrimination provisions don't apply to activities within its own faith community. The example used by the SBA in their guidance is that a nonprofit that operates a restaurant or a thrift store could not discriminate on the basis of the traits listed above, which nonprofits would not want to do. If you have a thrift store, you would certainly serve anyone that walked in and they would be buying your goods. The SBA has also said that, quote, it recognizes that various provisions of religious freedom enshrined in the Constitution and federal law are not altered or waived by the receipt of federal financial assistance. Next slide. When deciding whether to take the money, ultimately the decision is yours. Nonprofit leadership has the responsibility to determine whether to apply for the loan. We contend that the risk inherent from this process are minimal compared to the damages that nonprofits are facing from the government actions. Next. The next section will talk about, can you take the money? In other words, are you eligible? Next. We're going to start with a flow chart, which is a simplified overview of the process that you can use as a reference after this presentation. Churches and other houses of worship integrated auxiliaries of churches, and associations of churches qualify for the loans. They are considered 501c3 organizations, but they do not need to apply to the IRS for tax-exempt status. They do have to meet the qualifications and requirements of Section 501c3 of the Internal Revenue Code. This says to be tax-exempt, an organization must be organized and operate exclusively for exempt purposes that are set forth in 501c3, and none of the earnings may inure to the private shareholder or individual. This means the person who's governing the nonprofit can't take their money and stick it into their own pocket and use the nonprofit to enrich themselves. In addition, the organization may not be an action organization. In other words, it may not attempt to influence legislation as a substantial part of the activities, and it may not participate in campaign activity for or against political candidates. Now, for more information on political activity guidelines for churches and nonprofits, we have a page and a lot of information and videos and links. Go to lc.org/churches. Next slide. Eligible nonprofits must have been operating on February 15, 2020. If not, then they will not be eligible. Next slide. The nonprofit must have between 1 and 500 employees or paid independent contractors. Full-time, part-time, and temporary employees also count. There are a few exceptions to the 500 employee rule. So if you do have more than 500 employees, check with your legal counsel or your accountant for clarification on your eligibility. Slide 16. We're going to run through the rest of the flow chart just to show the process, which we will then show more in depth. So next, what you'll do once you decide that you're eligible, you will contact your lender and complete the loan application, and we'll go through this whole process together. The loan amount will be equal to the annual payroll costs for 2019, or the other period we discussed, divided by 12, multiplied by 2.5. And after that, you will calculate the number of full-time equivalent employees by choosing one of two time periods, either February 15th, 2019 to June 30th, 2019, or January 1st, 2020 to February 29th, 2020. Once you have done that, then you will read and sign disclosures and certifications and submit those to the lender with proof of your payroll costs. After that, once you receive the loan, you will have to spend at least 75% of the payroll costs, and you can spend up to 25% for mortgage interest, rent, utilities during the 8 weeks after the receipt of the loan. Once you've done that, then you have to decide at the end of June, did you retain or rehire the employees to equal the number that you put on your loan application? After that's done, you will provide lender with proper documentation of the expenses for the loan forgiveness. If you did not spend it properly according to the SBA, then the loan forgiveness will be reduced and your payments for the remaining amount must be made over a 2-year period for 1% interest. So that's just a general overview of how the process works. Next, we'll talk about how to take the money. Next slide. Here's the application. You will check with your bank or credit union or see the SBA website to find an eligible lender. Hopefully you've all downloaded the SBA approved loan application form and we can work through this form. Next. So when you're looking at completing the form, you will first add the identifying information. The box you'll check, if you're a nonprofit or a church, will be the box beside 501c3. Fill in, after that, the nonprofit name and address on the left side of the form. Underneath that, underneath the name, then put the address. Just to the right of that, you have the EIN or federal ID number. That's what you'll fill in the next block, and then the phone number, the name of the person who's the primary contact for the loan application, and their email address on the right side of the form. Next. Next, you will calculate the average monthly payroll, and you can choose 2 different time periods, either 12 months before you apply for the loan or for the calendar year of 2019. And the time periods used will differ if you have a newer nonprofit. Again, check with your accountant if you did not have payroll during those time periods. Now you have to decide if you're going to calculate all the annual payroll costs, which costs are you going to use? You will use salaries, wages, and any other compensation such as bonuses, group health care benefits, including health insurance costs, retirement costs, payroll processor costs. For example, if you used a payroll processor such as ADP to run your payroll and you don't do it in-house, you're allowed to use those costs, and state and local taxes. You will exclude emergency leave payments for which credit was allowed under FFCRA. And if you had employees who are out on emergency leave, wondering how to figure that credit, again, contact your accountant for help with that. You will also exclude any cash compensation for any individual that exceeds $100,000 per year. You will exclude the payroll costs made to anybody who has a primary residence outside of the United States. This is only to pay employees whose primary residence is inside of the U.S. You will exclude any payments made to independent contractors. Independent contractors can apply separately for loans, so the federal government does not want to pay double. You will also exclude the employer's share of the federal payroll tax. Next slide. Then you will divide the annual payroll costs that you've added up, excluding the things that don't need to be in there, and you will divide by 12 months to calculate your average monthly payroll and put that result in the average monthly payroll box. Next. To calculate the loan amount that you're asking for, you will multiply the average monthly payroll by 2.5 to get the loan amount. Most nonprofits will do that and stop there. There's only one condition that will change the loan amount. The SBA has a program called the Economic Injury Disaster Loans. These are used for, in case of hurricanes and tornadoes and fires and floods, they might declare a disaster in a certain area, and small businesses can apply for those. If your nonprofit has already received one of the EIDL loans in the time period from January 31 through April 3rd, then that is the only, that amount actually changes the amount you will put in for your loan amount, because the federal government is wanting people to take the old disaster loans and refinance it with this. You're actually at a better interest rate, so it would do well to do that. This will apply to very few nonprofits. If they do have that loan and they also received $100,000 from the new EIDL COVID-19 emergency advances that are available, they will subtract the emergency advance of $10,000 out of that figure, because that is not required to be paid. So if any nonprofit, even if they don't apply for EIDL, can get the EIDL COVID-19 emergency advance of $10,000 directly from the Small Business Administration by applying on their website. That amount does not have to be put anywhere on this application unless you also had the EIDL between January 31 and April 3rd, 2020. So typically, you'll put 2.5 times the average monthly payroll in the loan request box and leave it at that. Next slide. Next, you will calculate the number of employees. And what you're looking at is what they call full-time equivalent employees. You'll count the full-time employees and you look at these week to week. Those are those who average 30 or more hours per week. They could have 40 hours one week, 28 hours another week, but if those employees average over a certain time period, and we'll talk about the time period in a minute, if they average more than 30 hours a week, they're considered full-time. They're easy to calculate. Then you have to calculate your part-time employees and figure out how many part-time employees does it take to make up the number of hours where one person would have 30 hours. And here I like to use the full-time equivalent employee calculator from healthcare.gov. That's the only time Obamacare gave us anything good, is this easy full-time equivalent employee calculator. And we'll provide a link on our website to that also. As far as the period of time you're looking for to count your full-time and your equivalent employees, you can choose. You choose either the average number of employees from February 15th through June 30th, 2019, or you choose January 1st through February 29th, 2020. When you do both calculations, you'll want to choose the lower number because this is the baseline used to determine whether you have maintained employees at the end of the 8 weeks, and this will help lower what you have to repay. So once you calculate your full-time and part-time equivalents for either one of those time periods, put the result in the number of employees box. Next slide. You have to check off what the purposes are for your loan. You can check all the items, including payroll, lease or mortgage interest, and utilities. Just check the ones that apply. You can also check other if you intend to use the funds on interest for any other debt that was incurred before February 15th. There's very limited other reasons that you could use. Next slide. Applicant ownership. Most nonprofits will leave this section blank, as you typically don't have owners of a nonprofit. The exception would be, I guess, if you had one nonprofit owning another. Next slide. Questions 1 and 2 must be answered no, or the loan will not be approved. Let me grab my application here. I'm looking at this on a little tiny screen. It's kind of difficult to see those. Just a second. I think I have it here. Okay. Questions 1 and 2 must be answered no, or the loan will not be approved. And so it says, is the applicant or any owner of the applicant presently suspended, disbarred, proposed for disbarment, declared ineligible, voluntarily excluded from participation in this transaction by any federal department or agency, or presently involved in any bankruptcy? Second question is, has the applicant, any owner of the applicant, or any business controlled or owned or controlled by them ever obtained a direct or guaranteed loan from the SBA or another federal agency that is currently delinquent or has defaulted in the last 7 years and caused a loan loss to the government. So both of those have to be answered no, or your loan will not be approved. Question 3, answer no unless the nonprofit's affiliated with or under common control, such as an interlocking board with another nonprofit, or is part of a larger denomination that controls the nonprofit. If the nonprofit is affiliated with others, list the affiliated nonprofits on a separate Addendum A. And that question reads, is the applicant or any owner of the applicant an owner of any other business or have common management with any other business? If yes, list on a separate sheet as Addendum A. So you would just have to create an Addendum A, write the information on it, and submit it with your application. The SBA suggests languages for faith-based nonprofit organizations whose affiliation results in them having more than 500 employees when it's aggregated with other religious entities. Such nonprofits can still be eligible for the loan if their affiliation with the other religious group is for religious reasons. And the SBA said it will rely on your reasonable good faith determination regarding the reason for the affiliation. Next slide. Question 4, is the applicant or owner the owner of another business? I think we just did that one. Question 5, question 4. Oh, question 4, there we go. I was doing question 3 again. All right, has the applicant received an SBA economic injury disaster loan between January 31, 2020 and April 3, 2020? If yes, provides details on a separate sheet identified as Addendum B. So if you have, then create a document, call it Addendum B, include it with your application. Some lenders may have a process to do this online. Others, you may have to print it out and email it to the bank. Questions 5 and 6 must be answered no again, or the loan will not be approved. The questions are, they only really relate to individuals, so you would just be answering no to those, and it has to do with being criminals, and it mentions if applicants are an individual. So you would be typically just skipping those 2 questions. Next, question 7. Is the United States the principal place of residence for all employees of the applicant included in the applicant's payroll calculation above? So you've put all the payroll amounts on the application, and they want to make sure that you have excluded anyone whose main residence is overseas. So this question, you would have to answer yes, or you need to go remove those people from the amount listed above. Number 8, is the applicant a franchise that is listed in the SBA's franchise directory? I can't imagine a nonprofit that might be listed there. So you would say no. Next slide. Then there's a variety of certifications and authorizations that you will be required to read and certify. You have to certify that you've read the statements and understand the requirements of the loan, that your nonprofit meets the eligibility and size requirements, that you agree to comply with the terms of the loan, that your nonprofit is not engaged in illegal activities, that you agree to purchase American-made equipment and products when possible. That's an interesting requirement, but it stems back from some federal laws requiring businesses to buy American if possible, if they are going to receive government funds. It's actually a great idea. We need to be buying more American products anyway. You have to agree to provide documentation to the lender for the loan. And you have to say that the loan is necessary given the economic uncertainty of the current situation. This does not mean that you need to be broke. This just means that we've all suffered some side of difficulty during this time. And given the ongoing uncertainty, if you want to keep your employees working, the loan is a necessity. And of course, you have to agree that all the information given is accurate. So you would initial beside all the blocks, read all of those. It's only one page, and then sign and date at the bottom. Next slide. So we're going to talk finally about how not to owe the money once you qualified and you've applied and you've received it, and it's best if you don't have to pay it back. Next slide. So the funds can only be used for certain uses. Payroll costs, as we talked about above, what is included in those, mortgage interest, rent under a lease agreement, and utility payments incurred and made during the 8-week period from the loan date. So the important part here is that the costs must be incurred during the 8-week period from the loan date. Don't hold over old bills. The cost must be paid during the 8-week period. Don't wait until after 8 weeks from your loan and try to pay some of these. Next slide. Now, the CARES Act specifies that funds used for the allowable purposes of payroll costs, mortgage interest, rent, and utility payments will be forgiven. However, the SBA has issued guidance specifying that at least 75% of the funds must be used for payroll costs. Somehow they've decided that they can rewrite legislation, but that's another story. The other 25%, according to the rules, may be used for the other allowable purposes, including the mortgage interest, rent, and utilities. Utilities includes electric, water, gas, transportation, telephone, internet service, and all of these have to have been in place before February 15, 2020. So if you signed a new lease agreement on February 29th, that would not qualify. If you just started your electric bill March the 15th, that would not qualify. So all of these have to have been in place before February 15th. Next. When you get the money, consider putting it in a separate account. This is just a good idea for tracking, just to make sure that you're able to easily show where the money went and what it was spent for, so that you can get the maximum relief. The person who signed the application and made the certifications that we went over should also sign off on the payments as they're made from that account, just to make sure that it's spent for what it was supposed to be. Next slide. You must remember to ask for forgiveness. Your banker will not come to you very likely and say, would you like your loan forgiven? So after the 8-week period from the loan date, the date that you received the funds, the nonprofit should provide documentation to the lender showing how the funds were spent. And at that time, the lender has 60 days to say, yes, your loan's forgiven, or no, it's not. So make the application well in advance of the end of the 6-month deferment period to avoid interest payments. Next. Now, the amount forgiven will be decreased if the number of employees decreased. For example, if you laid people off, or if the pay of anyone who's making under $100,000 per year is decreased by more than 25% since February 15, 2020. If their pay was decreased, someone made under 100,000, you decrease their pay by more than 25%, the amount forgiven will be decreased by the equal amount. Regarding the number of employees and why that number on your application is important, if few full-time equivalent employees were kept by April 26, 2020, than were initially reported on the form, the forgiven amount may also be decreased. So to avoid a decrease in loan forgiveness, the nonprofit is given until June 30th to rehire the initial number reported. So what you want is to have the number on your loan application for your full-time equivalent employees to equal the number that you have at the end of the loan period. Next. So if there is a portion of your loan that's not fully forgiven, it will carry a 1% interest rate for a term of 2 years, and there is no prepayment penalty. So if you have funds left over, you didn't spend it on the items that you should have spent it on to get it forgiven, you can just send it back to the bank. There's no prepayment penalty. Interest on that portion will accrue from the date of the loan. Next. Now, the SBA will have until the 26th of April to issue updated guidance regarding the payback process. We anticipate they will continue to issue clarification on documentation and forms and details, as it has done several times since the passage of the CARES Act. They issued separate guidance on the 2nd, on the 6th, the 7th, and the 8th. Next slide. You need to apply as soon as possible. Funds are limited and are running out. Some banks, the initial day on the 3rd, closed their application process due to the overwhelming response. Congress has been working to authorize more funds. There's a fight between the Republicans and Democrats over that process. We don't know if that's going to happen or not. As we find out new information and have it available for you, check for updates at lc.org/paycheck protection. We will also post the presentation and supporting materials there and an article that I'm completing on this. Next slide. So what next? Contact your accountant for assistance if you need help with a loan application, or if you have questions about how the program applies specifically to your situation. I wish I had a time to walk all of you through the individual applications, but I don't. All I can do is provide this information and keep an updated website to give you assistance, and hopefully you will be able to contact a bank that will work with you and get additional help from your CPA. For more information about Liberty Counsel, you can always go to lc.org. And next slide. So I guess we have, if there's any questions, we will go to that.
Absolutely. Anita, we did have one question come in so far, and please do use that chat room to type out any other questions you all might have. From Brian, he asked, are other nonprofits eligible, such as C6s or C7s?
No, the C19 veterans organizations are, but that is all that was listed.
Okay, that was a very succinct question and answer. And then on our Google form, a question came in. Oh, we've got two questions now. First of all, is there guidance for independent contractors or solo clergy members and ministers?
Yes, the SBA has all that. Treasury.gov has that. We put links to both the SBA and the Treasury Department. at lc.org/paycheck protection. The process works very much the same, so there are not a lot of differences.
Okay. Yes, and also in the follow-up email that I'm going to be sending, as well as the lc.org/paycheck protection, I'm sending off a Treasury Department website, which will include for independent contractors and other types of businesses that we didn't cover with this this briefing, which was specifically for nonprofits and churches. Does anybody else have any questions? I mean, she was quite thorough and very good at walking you through exactly how to figure out each box on that application. Okay, here we go. From Hannah, can the PPP loan and the EIDL advance grant be used for the same purposes? I have not found a definitive answer.
The answer I found is if they are, then that will decrease the forgiveness. So that's why I'm saying that the best practice I think on that would be to, for the PPP, you have 8 weeks. Use that for the listed purposes of payroll, especially since you have to do 75% of that, and your, some of the other expenses, because that really the 25% for the program probably will not pay all your costs, especially if you're in a high market for rent. You're going to have a lot more costs for rent and utilities and transportation and other items like that. You're going to need a little extra money. So if you do, just don't use the EIDL money for payroll. Use your Paycheck Protection Program for the payroll, and then use the EIDL for some of the other costs.
And Anita, forgive me if I've got this wrong, but because everything I've learned about this, I've literally learned from you over the last few days. But this is where that best practice of setting up separate accounts for the PPP money and for the EIDL money would come in handy, because that way you could turn over all of the receipts and easily see where the Paycheck Protection Program was spent. And then you can show them very easily where the EIDL funds were spent. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, excellent. And then you keep that separate from your normal tithe contributions that come in, because those are separate. And that actually feeds into the next question from Helen, which is, what happens if your income or giving continues and is not dramatically affected and or part of it without the funds? Do they monitor whether or not you are affected?
Absolutely not. No, they're not looking at whether you even needed it. You could have, $50 million and you're uncertain whether your giving is going to keep coming into on the amount that you need to continue your large outreaches. The uncertainty is the question. You have to say, given the current financial uncertainty, if this were to go on for 12 months or 18 months, you'd be in trouble. So this is just some upfront money to help you, and hopefully things won't be shut down very long. But the uncertainty is you don't know how long it's going to last, and it seems like every week they extend a little longer. And so, this could go on for a while. So just because of the uncertainty, it doesn't really matter how much you have in the bank or whether you feel like you'll probably be okay. Unless you're absolutely 100% certain, that I wouldn't worry about it. I don't think they're going to be out there digging through all these and trying to monitor somebody to figure out if they were certain or not, because that's really all you're certifying.
Yeah, so basically this is a pillow of protection for 8 weeks. And then if your donations keep coming in, then it just helps you booster up the rest. And maybe you can use those other donations for blessing other people, other ministries, other groups. If, in 6 months or a year, everything is back to normal. Would that be an accurate statement?
Absolutely. And hopefully it's much sooner.
Yeah, absolutely. I hope it's much sooner.
We know the president wants to get us, everybody back to working soon. And well, we're just hoping that he doesn't rely too much on others who have a different agenda.
Yes. I've been called on the carpet by some of my conservative friends and also liberal friends about, well, are you going to accept the check that's coming from the federal government because I don't like stimulus? And I said, well, yes, because I didn't cause this. It wasn't by my own work, but I'm going to use that to support local restaurants in my town. I'm going to use it specifically for buying from local companies to help keep them in business during this time. Not that I need the $1,200, but I'm going to spend it specifically on local groups and local businesses to help bless them. So,
and another good idea is that people who itemize their deductions and usually are the only ones that can deduct their charitable contributions, but that has changed now that you can deduct off the top up to $300 toward a charity. So take part of that $1,200, send it to your favorite charity, 501c3. Liberty Counsel is a great ministry to support. So if you don't need the money, we'd be glad to use it for good works.
Okay, we do have a couple. Yeah, absolutely. Yes, give it to Liberty Counsel or the Leadership Institute. Since my VP is watching, make sure you consider us as well. This is a question, and then we'll switch over. There's some EIDL questions, which I know we didn't cover in this webinar, but let's take this question first. Can I email Liberty Counsel about this later? Not needed to ask, but my C3 is, oh, well, he said he didn't want it to ask, but I'm going to ask it anyway. His C3 is also a registered lobbyist at the state level. And he is assuming that this means that we should not apply or could not apply, even though we do not endorse candidates or campaign work. What are your thoughts on that? So they're a registered C3, but they're also a registered lobbyist at the state level.
Well, if you're a registered 501c3 and you've applied and been designated that by the IRS, you have your letter, and I would go on that. I assume you became a registered lobbyist in order to work on issues that would help or help your 501c3 rather than just on general lobbying issues. So, if you're focusing on something that's going to mean the difference between your 501c3 doing well or not doing well, then that's really not lobbying on, it's not doing the legislative activity that the typical organization would be doing if 501c4, for example. If you're doing work that a C3 is able to, then I wouldn't be as concerned.
Excellent. The next question, here, search tool to find a lender. It was, where is the best place to go to find a lender? I am going to actually put up on screen while you tell them exactly where to go. I'm going to put up the LC Paycheck Protection Program. Whoopsie, it just disappeared behind my screen. Hold on just a moment. The LC Paycheck Protection website here, because it's got all these wonderful resources. So this is where they should go to find all their resources, right?
Right, correct. And it has the those links on there that you mentioned.
Yep. And it says right here, search tool to find a lender. Let's open this in a new tab. And so it's the Small Business Administration, literally says find eligible lenders right here, sb.gov/paycheck protection-find. So in addition to the paycheck protection from Liberty Counsel, here is the direct link to the Small Business Administration. Now we've got a couple questions about the SBA loans for the EIDL, which I know is not necessarily your specialist, but let's see if you have answers for these. Brian asked, I understand the SBA has limited the grant under the EIDL loan to $1,000 per employee. Do you have a comment on that?
No, I don't. I know there's a $10,000 that you can apply for right on the front of their website. And that's pretty much as far as I've gone. I know you can get a larger loan from them and go to your bank for the regular disaster loan. Originally, I think they weren't including churches or nonprofits, and now they are. And as far as the limit on that, no, I don't know.
Okay. And we also had a question, and maybe you may or may not know, can we use the EIDL funds to make urgent repairs to church buildings, such as roof or HVAC, that we are no longer able to afford because of economic uncertainty? And of course, have this be forgiven, ?
You know, I think so, but I've looked and looked for a listing of what it can be spent on, and I'm not 100% certain. I'm going to have to look down at the EIDL a little bit more. I really can't say.
Okay. Good. And I was going to say, I will try to find a link to the IDL information and include that in the follow-up email so that those who are interested in that can take a look for themselves. And again, of course, the best advice I think that Anita gave us was talk to your accountant about all of these programs, because they can help you sort out specific questions to your specific nonprofits and ministries. And then next is, can you please post a link to guide people who are 1099 contractors? The answer is yes, because that will be on that Treasury page, and I will be emailing that out to everybody after this webinar happens. So look for that email to come from dina@leadershipinstitute.org, and I will find that here. If there's anybody else that has any questions, type those in while I look for that Treasury page for the person looking for the 1099 information. So Anita, do you have any final thoughts? Because it looks like that pretty much covered all of the questions that came in.
Well, I would say, you know, apply soon, because we don't even know if the money's there now. There's been such a need for this, and 8 weeks really isn't going to cure anything. And so apply early and pray often. That's my best advice. And visit lc.org for more information.
Yes, so you can see the lc.org/paycheck protection has got a ton of information up and stuff for you to use. lc.org also has churches. This is one of the ways that they serve ministries and such. They've got cooperative churches. Would you like to talk about that for just a moment while I find that other link that they were requesting?
Sure. If you want to become a cooperative church, go to our page, lc.org/churches, and you will find information regarding that. There's a little form to sign up. Basically, we will assist you with religious liberty issues. We will assist you with other information, overviewing your handbooks to make sure that they are adequate regarding religious liberty and other issues, pro-family issues that we work with. There's so many challenges that churches face today and religious organizations in this current environment and discrimination, and we want to be there for you and to help you through those processes. And we're here so that the gospel can be preached to all the world. We want to keep the doors open for the gospel, and that's exactly why Liberty Counsel was created back in 1989. And we continue to work with faith-based groups and create resources. We have a lot on political activity for nonprofits and churches that you can get information, videos, and find out what your pastor can do in this upcoming political season, what he can do at the pulpit, introducing candidates or talking about issues. And we think you don't really have to be afraid of speaking out on any issues. And not, you know, people are concerned about, for example, their 501c3 tax exempt status. You know, no church has ever lost its tax exemption from doing any kind of political activity. So don't let that scare you from being able to speak out on the important issues of today that affect families and our faith.
Wonderful. So I have put up into the chat that link to the Treasury Department, which has information for veterans groups, small businesses, independent contractors, as well as the nonprofits. I'm also going to be emailing that out to you for you to take a look. In that email that I'm going to be sending you is also, so that's the, by the way, the lc.org website is currently up on your homepage, so you can take a look at that, or up on your screen so you can take a look at that. Among other things in the email that I'm sending out to you is this healthcare.gov full-time equivalent employee calculator that Anita spoke about. It is super simple to figure out how many of your part-time employees can be added together to make a full-time employee. So please use that as you're doing the calculations, that you don't overestimate the number of employees, because if you overestimate the number of employees, you end up maybe not getting full forgiveness. And then the last thing I want to show you all as we close out today, Anita, you were wonderful. Thank you so very much. The Leadership Institute is, as I said, a 501c3 nonpartisan nonprofit. We're here to help grow the conservative community that's out there. And during this time, we've done that by moving all of our trainings that were in-house online. And you can take a look. We've got 3 and 4 and 5 different programs every single day. Everything from a class that's appropriate for grade schools through senior citizens on the history of the Constitution, to debate workshops and campaign management if you want to get involved in politics. Just tons of different classes that are available there, and that's been made available by the donors to the Leadership Institute. So anyway, once again, Anita, thank you so very much for speaking to us today, for helping us understand this program, the vital resource that it is during this time. That we didn't create these problems, the government did, the coronavirus did. I hope that everyone will continue to pray for an end to the coronavirus and a restoration to the greatness that is America. That's happy Passover and happy Easter, since we're in Holy Week here and on Passover actually right now today. Any final closing thoughts from you, Anita?
I just want to say thank you for your attention, and we hope to serve you throughout this process. We will pray for all those who joined into our conference, and that you will find the right help that you need. God bless you, and happy Easter.
Absolutely. Thank you all, everyone. You have a great night. And don't forget, if you have specific questions of your ministry, reach out to your accountant. You have a great day, and let's go ahead and log off. Thank you all.